There are greater rewards in life than money. And an old farmer taught me something I've never forgotten. A peasant can see deeper and farther than an Oxford Don. Hi, my name is G.K. Ganesan Kasinathan. My friends call me GK. Many years ago, there was a farm deep in the hinterland of Perak. A brook courses through it. On the one side lived a family in a shack. They are two boys. They farmed the land. They lived off the produce in the land. The parents transferred the property in his name with the promise that he would look after his younger brother. The brothers had an excellent relationship. They worked very hard on the land. They had chicken and ducks. They planted vegetables. They had fruit trees. They sold the produce at the local markets. That was enough to look after the needs of the family. The brothers led a happy but frugal life. One day, his elder brother expressed a desire to venture into another business. He left the farm in uncle's hands and he went off to another part of Perak. Uncle stayed on at the farm. All he knew was the land. He had his ducks, he had his chicken, he knew them by name. He tended to them, he sold eggs and vegetables, looked after himself. Then he met Auntie, he married her, they had no children. He wanted her to have a good life. He repaired the house. She liked flowering plants and he planted around the house some nice shrubbery. She loved him to bits. She worked with him at the farm. The elder brother would visit them often. Uncle and Auntie enjoyed these visits. She would retire into the kitchen to cook for the brothers. The uncle would talk to the elder brother. They would walk around the house. They would eventually retire into the front of the house at the veranda. They would talk quietly for hours and hours. Sometimes they just looked out at the orchard. Each brother knew every tree, when the tree had been planted, when it bore fruit, how they had lugged the fruits to the farm, from the farm out into the market and sold them, and returned home plastic bags, a little bit of money. They were really good friends. Eventually, the elder brother said to uncle, "You don't have to give me the proceeds of the farm. You keep it for yourself. I'm okay. I'm doing well. I can look after my wife and my own children. You take care. You stay here as long as you like. After you, your wife, your children, don't worry about it. I'll tell my children." But unfortunately, there was no documentary evidence recording this conversation. There things stood for many decades. Eventually, the elder brother passed on. Nobody from his family bothered uncle or auntie. They lived on. Grandchildren were born to the elder brother's children. It didn't bother them. But one day, one of the descendants turns up and says to uncle and auntie, "We want the land back. Can you give it to us?" Uncle and auntie expressed a desire to stay on that land till the day they passed on. They requested for this permission. They were denied. Very sadly, they went back to the land. They received a letter of demand. Litigation ensued. The question was whether he had any legal interest in the land and whether he could continue to occupy it. Eventually, the court decided that he had to leave. He fought appeals at all levels. Many kind lawyers must have represented him, all to no avail. Many years later, he receives a notice which says either he moves or that he would be turned out. He had a matter of days. He's completely at a loss. In desperation, what he does is he takes a bus with his wife from Ipoh and turns up at the Klang bus stand. You know the Klang bus stand? The old bus stand. He walks to the bar council with his wife. And the bar council reception says, "You go to this place, talk to this guy." So we had no idea that he was coming. You know, law offices are very quiet places. Hear very loud noises, sounds of a Chinese man speaking. He looked like an old tree, all barks and gnarled, rippling muscles, but lean and wiry and tall and proud, but bent over with grief. Auntie is nodding. I can see moisture at her eyelids. Their glasses are all misted up. They're old. And he says, "All is lost. Can you help us?" So I say, "Can you show us your document?" He puts his hand into a pink plastic bag and comes out with sheets and sheets of paper. We pour through them and we find no hope. I mean, the federal court has ruled against him. What is there to say? But we say to them, "Could you hold on? We would like to study the papers." So they sit out at the reception. We forget about lunch. We sit. We hit the books. We look at all the law reports. Our library tables are littered with open law journals and case laws and textbooks. The whole office comes to a standstill. The lawyers who come back from court come and ask us, "What's up?" We tell them, "Look, it's uncle and auntie over there. They are in trouble. Can we do something?" So can you imagine all these lawyers, completely busy commercial lawyers, coming in there, sitting down and hitting the books, and each fellow is like saying, "Oh, I've discovered this point." He said, "Cannot." High Court said, "Cannot." Another fellow says, "Oh, what about this point?" Court of Appeal dismissed it. "But what about this point?" I say, "Federal Court dismissed it." So what do we do? So we tell him, "Cannot." Then one of the juniors say, "Why don't you try your kamikaze technique? If you know your client is virtuous, if you know that your client has a right, but some bad technique people do, you use this kamikaze point, you tie down the defense with a massive legal point, why don't you do that?" So I said, "Okay, look for a massive legal point," and they look for it, and I find it. So we eventually call them and tell them nothing can be done, but I've got one last arrow that I would like to fire. I'll raise a kamikaze point. I will raise a point of law that nobody has thought about and threaten to injure the opponents by a long, protracted argument that deals with constitutional rights. And in that way, tie them down with long arguments. And so we tell them, this is what we're going to do. And the only question he asks, he's not interested in any of this fancy stuff. Can we win? And I say, "No." "Then why are you doing it?" I said, "We'll try." He says, "Okay." We run the argument. We fail. End of story. We're very sad. We shake their hands, they go off. Months later, I can hear loud Chinese conversation at the reception. I stick my head out of my room. I motion my secretary and ask her, "What's up?" She says, "Uncle, auntie." Okay? So I go out and I see a lot of plastic bags full of fruits, different kinds of fruits. He waves a hand over the gifts and he says, "All planted from our orchard." His eyes gleam with pride and he says, "Our fruits, we planted them, our lands, our effort." So I'm not interested in the fruits. I'm asking him, Your family turned you out of the land? He says, no. But there's this determination in him, and he says, doesn't matter, I'll bury my bones there. My wife will bury her bones there. All this fighting seems to have scared them off. I'm still there. And he says in Chinese, and defiant and happy, and Auntie is shaking everybody's hands, and she's bobbing her head up and down, and they are behaving like we gave them a fantastic royal victory. The food is shared with everybody in the family across the office. Some of them take it even back home. I get home. I take one of these rambutans, just slightly smaller than a tennis ball, red, juicy, and I bite into it, and the juice runs down my face. It's rich. It's deep. It's true. Just like Auntie and Uncle.